Welcome to Jazz on My Mind, Coast to Coast. I'm Richard Blackwell. Today we're in Wilmington, Delaware, and the home of a young man who's doing everything he can to keep jazz alive. He's a tremendous saxophone player and band leader, and he's also a very diligent educator. You probably read about him in the blog section on our website. My Jazz Chat with Mr. Vince Lardier is coming up next on Jazz on My Mind. Vince, welcome to Jazz on My Mind.
Mr. Blackwell, nice to see you again.
Vince, I'm so glad to have you here on the show. Now, Vince, I first met you at Galuccio's.
That's right.
And you were performing with your band. Some mutual friends of ours, Alfie and Dexter, said, they told me, in fact, Richard, you gotta go and see this gentleman, Vince Lardier, play. And when we got there, we walked in, you were absolutely smoking. Your band is out of sight, man.
Well, that's very kind of you to say.
Well, it's not kind, it's the truth. You guys play some of the most purest, finest jazz that you can find in the city.
Well, I consider myself a musical purist. A bit on the conservative side. I just like to keep the tradition alive.
Well, you're doing a very good job. Now, the band that we heard you performing with that night, who are those gentlemen?
Well, that night we had Tony Maselli, a very fine vibes player from Philadelphia.
Very good.
And we had Bob Culligan on bass from Delaware.
That's right.
Bass player. And we had Tom Palmer, who actually teaches drums down at the University of Delaware. He was the drummer that night.
You guys were smoking, Vince. My congratulations to such an outstanding band.
Well, thanks for the compliment.
Now, this love for jazz and your saxophone playing, when did this begin? At what age did you realize that you wanted to play an instrument?
I must have been very young, Richard. I was probably about 8 years old. I was playing clarinet. I started on clarinet, and I switched probably by the time I was 11 or 12 to saxophone. And I had always loved big band music and listened to a lot of my father's old big band records, and and I got involved in jazz that way, listening to big bands, and eventually I got turned on to Charlie Parker, and that was pretty much it. Yeah.
Speaking of Charlie Parker, who were some of the other people who influenced you when you first began playing?
Well, I have a lot of influences, among them Sonny Stitt, Cannonball Adderley.
Now, when you mention Sonny Stitt, that man's name sends chills through my spine. Right. I had the pleasure of meeting Sonny Stitt in about 1976, and what a tremendous saxophone player he was.
He was a marvelous musician.
Yes, he was. Yes. And some of the other people as well, other than Sonny Stitt.
Cannonball Adderley,
yes.
I love Stan Getz.
Yes.
Phil Woods, Jackie McLean, you know, just a lot of Al Cohn, Zoot Sims, a lot of the older players, Dexter Gordon.
Yeah, yeah. So you've got quite a musical background then with that influence.
Well, I try. I try to keep true to the history of the music.
And believe me, you really do. I love that sound that you have.
I appreciate it.
Now, you started playing at the age of 8 years old. You went on to play in high school. I know that also you were quite a musician in high school. Tell us about that.
Well, I was fortunate to be involved in some of the all-state programs that the state of Delaware runs, and that led to me being involved with the All-Eastern Jazz Band in high school, and I was also fortunate to be selected to play lead in the McDonald's All-American Jazz Band, which at that time was directed by Bob Curnow, who used to be a member of the Stan Kenton, did a lot of arrangement with the Stan Kenton Orchestra, and it was just a great experience getting a chance to tour the country with wonderfully talented young musicians and glean some of the expertise that Bob Curnow had about the music.
Now, from there, I know you went on, you you played with the Tom Dorsey Orchestra under the direction of Mr. Morrow.
Buddy Morrow, right. That was a great learning experience. I was out on the road with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, and Buddy Morrow, at that time, he must have been, I'd say he was probably in his mid to late 70s. He was still riding the bus with the band, and we did one-nighters. I mean, we would do a one-nighter in Washington, North Carolina, get on the bus and drive to Omaha, Nebraska, and then come back. Yeah, and then come back to the East Coast again. I mean, it was amazing. We would do one-nighters all over the country. It was a great experience. Buddy Morrow was a great band leader. I learned a lot from him, and yeah.
How was that being on the road?
It's
and
rough.
being such a young man at that time. Well, you're still a young man now, but being even younger.
Well, that's
how
kind
was
of you
that?
say.
How was that being on the road for such an extensive period of time?
Well, it was an eye-opening experience to be out on the road at a young age, but a lot of the members of the band were young too. A lot of those bands, they hire a lot of musicians right out of college these days, or at least they did. Buddy Morrow did. So it was a great experience.
At any point on that road trip, did you say, "Hey, this is not for me"?
No.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah, I was I was a musician. I feel like the thing that I'm born to do is I would love to play clubs every night if I could, but unfortunately it's hard to do that these days.
Now, where you are now with your musical career, have you had anything recorded?
Probably the most important recording that I've done, probably to this date, was a friend of mine, a wonderful alto player from Washington, D.C., Marty Now. And the recording features many of my compositions, and probably the best thing on the album is a guest appearance by Phil Woods, who Marty and myself both feel is probably the greatest living alto player in the world.
Tell me about your relation, if you can, with Mr. Woods. I know you guys have known each other for a long time.
We met back when he was playing the Rehoboth Beach Jazz Festival in 2000, and I had been playing right before him, and I guess he had heard me play and was gracious enough to ask me to sit in with his the band during the festival, and I did, and it was just wonderful playing with these guys because I was so familiar with their music. I've been listening to him since I was probably 11 or 12 years old, and getting a chance to play with his band and him was amazing. And since then, I've been fortunate enough to have sat in with him many times and then record with him on Marty's album.
Now, you mentioned that on that particular recording that you have had some of your songs. What are the titles of some of the songs that you have?
Some of his, one of them is a line I wrote over Out of Nowhere, which I entitled Door Number 3.
Okay.
One of them was a line I wrote over the changes to Lover, which is entitled Slash and Burn. One of them was a tune that I wrote over the changes to I Remember You, which I entitled A Cadillac Jack.
If I remember correctly, did you play I Remember You the night that I met you?
I played I Remember April.
Oh, okay, close.
That's very close. Good memory.
Yeah. Now, I'm telling you, you have such a tremendous career, musical career. And I also know that you are teaching at this point. Tell the Jazz on My Mind audience about your educational skills and what you're doing in that respect.
Well, like most musicians, I feel it's important to share with others what you've been fortunate enough to accumulate through your life experience, and teaching is a big part of me being able to pass on what I know. So I teach all ages. I teach jazz as well as just fundamentals, how to play the instrument. So I've been teaching probably for 15 years now.
Now, let me ask you a question, and I want your honest opinion. What do you feel about the state that jazz is in today? Well,
I can't probably give an answer to that, Richard. I can look at my feelings on maybe our culture, maybe that would be more appropriate. I really feel that, and there's always exceptions, but I really feel that our culture, if you look at the music maybe that our grandparents listened to, the way they danced, the way the classical music they listened to, even the cartoons that they used to have Bugs Bunny